Hello, Blake Rudis here with F64 Academy and F64 Elite, and today I've got a phenomenal tutorial for you that is going to empower you to do something awesome at the beginning of your workflow to give you that one leg up at the very beginning of your processing. I've got a lot of information and it's going to be flying at you. So here's what I suggest. Take notes, subscribe to the YouTube channel as always, and when we're done and complete, you download the extras that I have for you. But don't download them until we're done. Okay, so let's jump into this because I've got a ton of stuff to cover with you. And I know that by the time I'm done, you're going to be like, what? Where has this been all my life? Let's go. So what I want to share with you today is some best practices on making your own lookup table based profiles for both Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom. Now, here's the thing. You're going to need to know a little bit about some things before we begin this. I'm going to be talking about things like blend if, vector layers, pixel layers, masks, lookup tables. There's a lot of things that I'm going to say in this that I just don't have the time to teach you everything on. So you do have to have a little bit of understanding of some of these concepts, but I'm going to try my best to give you as much detail as I can in this best practices video here. But the main thing I want you to grab from this is that you have the capability to add some real power to the beginning of your workflow that happens in both Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom on the raw file when you use these profiles. So let's just go all the way back to the beginning. What the heck is a profile? We'll just start at the very basics, okay? So a profile, back in the past, a profile was basically this little, let's imagine a piece of transparency film that would be made specifically for a certain type of camera. And what this did was, as soon as you brought your RAW file into something like Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom, this piece of transparency film would go over top of the RAW file and basically have some profile information based on the camera that was brought in. That's essentially where this whole profile thing started. But with one of the most recent updates to Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom, they've allowed us to create some really creative profiles from lookup tables. And we can make profiles from settings, those settings that are right there in Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom. We can make them from look tables, which are a little bit more confusing, and we can also make them from lookup tables. And lookup tables are what we're going to target today. Before we actually jump into how we make a lookup table and how we make a profile, we've got to talk about where this lookup table profile will affect our image. So a profile is not presets. A profile is not something that's going to change or alter the sliders in your settings when you push it. If you're in presets in Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom, when you click it, it will revert all of those things that were recorded into that preset on your actual sliders. What a profile does is it works on the RAW file without adjusting any of the settings, just like that piece of transparency film that would go over top of your RAW file that would alter the way your RAW file looks. So I call this the stack. Okay, there's a stack. The bottom, the very basic part of the stack is the RAW file. That's what you bring into Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom when you start to edit. If you imagine it as like a little sheet of paper or a little block, it's easier to kind of visualize this. So anything that happens on top of that RAW file is not actually happening on the RAW file. That's actually never changed. It's recorded into something called an XMP file that follows the RAW file. So your basic settings, that will rest on top, and your local adjustments will rest on top of your basic settings, and they work in that order. The tricky thing here is that we have the profile, and the profile actually rests right on top of the RAW file in between the basic settings and the RAW file. So when you apply a profile, the way it looks is like, okay, I'm going to edit this image. Let me apply this profile first and then do some edits, because the profile is going to change and alter the way those basic settings and local settings interact with your RAW file based on how it's stacked up. So now we have something called a LUT-based profile. And the interesting thing about a LUT-based profile is that yes, it rests at the bottom, right there above your RAW file in between the basic settings. However, the LUT, or the lookup table that's included in it, will happen on top of the overall stack. It happens on top of your basic settings. It happens on top of your local adjustments. This is where things get really crazy and really cool. So what I need you to gather from this is just to understand how a lookup table profile works. Yes, it's going to rest on top of the RAW file. Yes, we should probably select it first. However, all of the settings that are baked into that LUT profile will work on top of our basic settings. So they're constantly interacting with the image. And I'm going to show you how this works in a demonstration as we build a lookup table. So now that we've talked about what a lookup table is, we've talked about profiles and what they are, let's talk about some best practices for these things. So I actually make all of my LUT-based profiles right here in Photoshop. And what I have for you are 3 different types of images. A really basic image of basically a piece of wood. This is going to be helpful for us. We have a landscape image here in Olympic National Park on Rialto Beach. And we have a stock image of a beautiful model here. Now, because I typically don't shoot people, I like Adobe stock. They rock. And that rhymed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start this off on my image here from Rialto Beach, okay? So when I'm building a LUT-based profile, there's a couple things that I keep in mind as I'm building it. Number 1, I know for a fact that that LUT-based profile is constantly going to be interacting with my image even after I'm done with all my adjustments, my basic settings and my local adjustments. So everything I do to those things, this LUT profile is constantly going to be working on top of all of those things that I'm doing. So here's your first best practice tip. Always create your LUT-based profiles on a finished image. And you're thinking like, what? Okay, here's my workflow. My typical workflow goes tone, color, and artistic effects. I get my tones looking good, I get my colors looking good, and I get my artistic effects looking good. And then I call that image done. So I do tonal adjustments, I do color adjustments, and then I do effects that could basically tone or color-based effects. And that might be kind of confusing, but if we think about that, we can do tone-based LUT profiles, we can do color-based LUT profiles, and we can do artistic-based profiles. So depending on where you want to use this in your workflow, that's what you kind of have to decide on. You have to say to yourself, okay, am I making a profile because I want the tones to be adjusted? If so, you could make something like an S-curve and save that as a profile. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to show you the idea behind creating a LUT-based profile and give you some of my best practices on the types of adjustment layers to use and what not to do. And then we're going to make that LUT, and then we're going to make a profile from it. And then I'm going to talk to you about how this stuff kind of works. So let's just do this. Let's make a sepia tone based profile that we're going to use on this photograph. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go into our adjustment layers and make a gradient map. Now, of the adjustment layers that I would use, this is going to be, I guess, your second tip for your best practices for LUTs. Use things like solid color, use levels, use curves, use maybe even, selective color or channel mixer, or you could even use color balance. What we're trying to use here are things that are innate to Photoshop that are not innate to Lightroom. So we leverage Photoshop on the back end essentially to use it on the front end. I know that we have to kind of reverse engineer our thinking on how we're going to do this here. That's why people make a lot of money off of these profiles here, because this does take quite a bit of brain power to put these together. I know myself and many of my photo educator buddies like Brian Matiash and Matt Kliskowski who have made these LUT-based profiles. We don't make them in a tin can, okay? We actually put a lot of thought into these things. So I'm going to use a gradient map. And with this gradient map, because it's transitioning from blue to white, I'm going to change that to a sepia tone type of look, something like this. I might even take this color out of here, just delete, I might just take this color out of here, delete that, and maybe delete that one so that this would be our sepia tone type of effect. Okay? So this essentially is the start of making a LUT. What we need to do is we need to have an adjustment layer. Here's your third tip. We don't want to use anything that has a mask in it. Do not do any masking. It's not going to transfer very well. Don't use anything that's a pixel-based layer. So if you want to make that blur effect by pressing Command-Control-J on your background and Gaussian blurring it and trying to make that a profile, it's not going to work, okay? The only things that we should have in LUTs are going to be adjustment layers. And with those adjustment layers, we can use things like blend if and opacity and fill. But don't try to use masking or anything pixel-based or it's just gonna be ugly. You can experiment with it if you'd like, but it's not gonna work. So this is a really simple thing to do actually. It sounds a lot more confusing than it is, but it's very simple. So what we're gonna do with this gradient map layer here is we're gonna go to File, we're gonna go to Export, and we're gonna export as a color lookup table. With this color lookup table, let's call this Gradient Test. And I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this, press Command or Control C, and you'll know why in a second. With the quality, we want the grid points to be at 32, and we want this format to be set to cube. Make sure that that's set to cube. Cube at 32 grid points. That's all we need to do here. You want to put your copyright information in here, go right ahead and do so, but it's not really necessary. And we'll go ahead and press OK. The reason why I copied what I called that is because right here it's trying to tell me, hey dude, you want to name this Untitled? No, I want to name it Gradient Test. So all I got to do there is press Control V. Now I've already got a file on my desktop that I want to send this to. So I'm going to put it right into this LUT's best practices. It's the folder that I've got going here. You're going to need to know this though, so you can navigate to it. Save it to your desktop or save it somewhere that you know where it's going to be. It's going to do this thing where it looks like it's duplicating your image and then sandwiching it down. Your LUT is made. Your lookup table is made. So now what we're going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. And we could open up a raw file to get into Adobe Camera Raw, but let's just do it this way. Let's press Control or Command Shift and A. And that's going to open up Adobe Camera Raw as a filter. To make the profile, all the profiles in Adobe Camera Raw are right over here. You see that? We have a bunch of different profiles. I've made a bunch of my own. I'm going to close that for a second. To make your own profile, go like you're making a preset. And I know you're saying, Blake, dude, you just said that profiles weren't presets. You're correct, they aren't. If we press Alt or Option and we click on this little tearaway sheet here, it's going to pop up something that says New Profile. It's not saying New Preset, it's saying New Profile. The key here is to press Alt or Option and click on that tearaway sheet so that it makes a new profile and not a new preset. Now, another reason why I copied that, well, I'm going to press Control V here to call this Gradient Test. Now you'll see right here, current image settings will be saved into this profile. If we made any adjustments to our settings, those would be saved in here too. Notice how I said we could save our settings into our profiles? I don't really recommend doing that unless you really know what you're doing with settings. Because you might think to yourself, oh, I can make a cool HDR preset by dropping the highlights and increasing the shadows. Well, you can, is that if you were to drop that to -100 and +100 on your highlights and your shadows, guess what? You're not gonna be able to leverage those sliders anymore. So that's why we don't typically do much with a LUT-based profile with settings. We typically only do it with the LUT to leverage the LUT and not the settings. Here, I'll go into the color lookup table right here. Just click this button right here. It's gonna say, well, where do you wanna open this from? Well, I'm gonna open it from the place that I saved it to. And that's that gradient test, and I'll double click it. Right here, it's going to say the minimum and the maximum, 0 and 200. You can leave sRGB there. You can leave clip just there. You can leave samples at 32. That's fine. With the minimum and the maximum, what you want to know here is that it's going to start at 100%. Now, it's giving you the opportunity to take this LUT profile and make the minimum absolutely 0. What I like to do is make that 50. And then the maximum, I usually set to 150 because 200 is just too much. And then we'll press OK. And what it's done is it's actually made that profile for us. So if we go back over here and then click on our profiles and scroll down here to my user profiles, you're going to see the gradient test. And look at that. Now notice how I said that this LUT-based profile works underneath our basic settings and our local adjustments. I'm going to prove that to you right now. Right now, if I were to go ahead and increase my color temperature here, you're like, wait a second, why isn't the temperature changing? Well, the temperature isn't changing because all of that data from that LUT profile is resting on the top. So you might be thinking, well, I don't want to use this on my images. Well, I'm showing you on a gradient map that has no blend modes or opacity or blend if used because I want you to see how this layer stack works. So if I were to increase the contrast or reduce the highlights, bring up the shadows, maybe even make this image darker, notice how it's affecting all the tones, but it's affecting all the tones underneath this sepia tone look. That's pretty freaking cool if you ask me. So if we were to go over to our local adjustments and get our adjustment brush and paint all over here, just haphazardly, and try to increase our color here, guess what? We don't get any color there either. Why? Because as I said, you've got your raw file, you've got your profile, your basic adjustments, your local adjustments, and whatever is recorded in the LUT happening on top. Pretty freaking cool. This stuff excites me. So that best practice tip where I told you to think about the end result as you're building the LUT profile, well, now it makes complete sense because we need to know exactly what our image is going to look like when we put this LUT-based profile on there. That's the actual skinny on how to make your own LUT-based profiles. But let's take a look at something else and talk about how other different adjustment layers can be used to make these LUT profiles. So let's just go ahead and press cancel on this. And before we do that, let's go ahead and open up this image here. If I press Control Shift and A on this photograph, just to show you how this LUT profile works, I'll go into the profiles and I will scroll down to my user profiles and I have my gradient test. Look at that. You see that? Pretty cool, right? So if we drop the exposure here and increase our highlights and drop our shadows, we get that sepia tone type of look on this image. It doesn't have that real brownish sepia tone. This is actually more of a calmer sepia tone than our typical sepia tone would be. But our exposure, our highlights, all that stuff is happening underneath that LUT-based profile. This is so awesome, man. This is the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. I think to myself like, wow, what else can we do with this? Now look at these settings though. If we were to change this to, Adobe's typical color profile, it would look hideous. But because of the things that are happening with that LUT-based profile, it actually looks pretty good. So you can actually get some really creative effects happening right in Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom. This is the kind of stuff that the best dreams are made of, man. Like, oh gosh, I love it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and press cancel on this one, go back in here. So let's do this. I'm going to show you how this works and what is actually happening with a LUT-based profile. So if I open up a solid color layer, I'm going to make this pure red, just a pure red, horribly awful solid color layer. Now I did say that there's some things that you want to consider here. We don't want to use a mask because the mask will not translate because it's pixel based, correct? But this is what we can do. We can use blend if. So let's say you're like, okay, I want this effect that I'm going to be creating to only affect my background, my darkest, my lightest light areas and not affect my blacks. So if I double click on this, I can come down here into the blend if and protect all of the dark areas of my image. I can press Alt or Option to get a nice smooth feather on this and maybe go over to here to something like that and press OK. Now, you would never want this type of solid red happening on your image, but we're going to make a profile of this anyway so that I can show you how this works. So I'm going to grab this, I'll press Ctrl C, and I'm going to put it on top of this image of our lovely model and press Ctrl V. And this is just to show you how this works. So now I'm going to go up to File, I'm going to go to Export, and I'm going to go to Color Lookup Tables. I'm going to call this Red Test, and then copy it, okay? And 32, cube, press OK. Paste that there, and I'm going to save that into that place that I have my LUT-based profiles right in here, and press Save, okay? Made the LUT, right? So I'll go ahead and turn this eyeball off for now. I'll press Ctrl-Shift-A to get me into Adobe Camera Raw as a filter to build this profile. And then I'm going to go over to my preset, press Alt or Option on the tearaway sheet, Red Test. Don't want any settings in there. Color Lookup Table, Red Test, and press OK. We can have our minimum set to 50 and our maximum set to 150, okay? And then press, actually, let's change this to 0 and I'll show you how that works. And then we'll press OK. So let's go back over to our basic adjustments, go down to that profile, and look at that. We have our red test, and it's ugly. It's ugly, ugly. I did another red test before this. So the reason I wanted to show you the amount slider is because right here you have an amount slider. If we go up, it's going to give us 150. As we bring this down, it will actually let us get to the point where this doesn't get used at all. So 0 is our end point. If you were to change that to 50 and drag that slider all the way down, well, now you're basically just giving yourself more room to move that slider down in the increments. So that this would actually be more like something like this. If you were to set that at 50, if you were to drag that all the way down, this would be our stopping point, okay? So let's bring that to 100. So what I want to show you with this is that as we make our image brighter, look what happens. Because we were saying that we're going to protect our dark areas, right? So as we make this darker, look at how it protects those dark areas. It knows it in the LUT. Come on, dude. Oh man, I get like giddy excited. I wanted to make this tutorial like a 10-minute tutorial, but I can't help myself. I'm going to keep going as long as you're going to keep following, okay? So as we bring this down and make this darker, this is happening in the LUT. The LUT is protecting all of those dark areas as we make this image darker. They are smart. They are extremely smart. So you wouldn't necessarily want to use this red wash. But what I'm getting at here is that, let me close this down. What if we took this and we changed this blend mode to something like soft light or overlay? Let's change it to soft light. I like soft light a little bit better. And then we drop the opacity on this a little bit down to about there. And then maybe we change this color. Let's change this color to something that we might actually want to work with. Like maybe this midnight twilight blue type look. Look at how we changed the whole image of this. The whole image is changed by the color grading that we're choosing on this. Let's put another protection measure in there. Let's just double click this and we'll move over the highlights a little bit to protect those highlights from getting any tone compression from this as well. And that looks about right. Let's just do something like that, okay? So now we've got this very subtle color grade happening. Actually, it's probably a little bit more powerful than we'd think. But when I'm making these profiles, I really do go more on the subtle approach than I do on the heavy approach. The reason why I'm showing you heavy type of LUTs right now is so you can visually see what is happening to your photograph. So let's take this and we will make this a profile. Let's go to File, let's go to Export, and let's go to Color Lookup Tables. Solid test. Copy it. cube 32, paste. And then we're going to save it into that folder and then press save. Okay. So now let's go ahead and delete this layer. And then we're going to go into Adobe Camera Raw as a filter, Control or Command Shift A. And then we can go up to our, and then let's go up to our presets, Alt or Option on the tearaway sheet to make a new profile, Control V, lookup table, solid test. Okay. And then we'll go down to our profiles, our user profiles here, and go to our solid test. Now look at this. As we make this brighter and darker, look at what happens to that color grade. Pretty stinking cool, isn't it? So we get color grading happening right in our profile. Ha! I love it. As we use the color adjustment here though, look at how we can mix that color in, other colors in with that LUT-based profile. Pretty cool. Now this is a very heavy color grade that we're doing right now. I'm doing that on purpose, as I said, so that you can visually see what's happening here. So let's go to this image right here. Now, let's go ahead and delete that and press Control Shift A. And the reason why I put that red on there so you can see what she looked like with that red on there. Let's go into our profiles. Let's look at our profiles and let's do that red test. See that red test? Let's go back here. Let's prove this. As we make it darker, she gets protected. Isn't that cool? Come on. If you're not excited at home right now, you better be. Gosh, this is amazing. Let's go down to our solid test right here, okay? So we've got our solid test. We have to default our settings. The thing that you need to know here, best practice tip number, I forgot where I'm even at now because this tutorial wasn't supposed to go this long. The thing that you need to remember here about these settings is that for the profiles, each profile, because of the way it works, is going to alter your settings differently. So if you typically do this thing where like, okay, I'm going to drop the highlights and increase the shadows, I'm going to start playing around with this stuff and that's your typical workflow. Well, when you throw a profile on there, it's going to throw everything into a different world. And you'll see that because if we go to the regular Adobe Color, that while this setting might look good here, in any one of these other settings that we have in here, we might need to do something else to that to make it look good. Okay, so just keep that into consideration, that the profile may dictate what your settings are. That's a really good thing to remember, okay? So I just wanted to show you that, the difference between that red test that we did before and the gradient test that we did there. So you might be thinking, okay, Blake, why did you bring this block of wood in here? We don't need to see that. Yes, you do. I'm bringing that block of wood in here because I want you to see something with an adjustment layer like selective color. Okay, selective color is one of my favorite adjustment layers because it knows what percentage of red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow are in your image. Okay, and it knows that because of the pixel data that's there. So if I were to go into the magentas of this image, I know this image has magenta in it, and I were to increase the magentas, maybe make them a little bit more yellow. Let's do something here that just looks really whack. Okay, so let's just do something like that and make them. We want to make this not look good at all. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want you to see what happens here. So that doesn't look very good. I'll press Control C and I'm going to paste that onto the picture of our girl and press Control V. Notice how it makes her shirt brighter. Let's go over here and press Control V. Notice how it does nothing. Why does it do nothing? Well, because as I said, the selective color is going to look at the colors that are available in the image and modify them if they're available. There's no magenta in here, so it's not going to do anything. So you might be thinking, well, what's that going to do to the LUT? Good question. So let's go over to this image. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Export. I'm going to go to Color Lookup Tables. And I'm going to change this to Selective Test. And then Cube 32, press OK. Let's copy this first, press OK. And then we're going to save that into our LUT Best Practices as that Selective Test. Saved it out. Now let's go over to, let's just delete this first. Go into this image, delete this, go into this image, Control Shift A, make that profile by going to our presets, Alt Tearaway Sheet, rename that Selective Test, go into Selective Test and press OK. Go back over to our profiles here, go back to our user profiles, lots of run around, and go to Selective Test. Okay, so now we've actually allowed that Selective Test to have a 0 to a 200 capability. And notice how it's adding magenta to this image because magenta is there. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, is that going to work for that block of wood? I don't know. Let's go check it out. So I'm going to press cancel, go over to the block of wood, delete this selective color layer here that we don't need here. Press Control Shift A. And now I'm going to go to the profiles, go to user profiles, and I'm going to click that selective test. And look at that. Because we don't have magenta in this image, even if we bring the amount to 200, it's not going to do anything. These profiles are wicked smart. I mean, this kind of stuff just blows my mind. I have no idea how Adobe figured out this voodoo magic that they've got in these profiles, but when they did, it was earth-shattering for the community. Now, I know I've thrown a lot of information at you. It seems to be my new trend of 2019, have you drink from a fire hose. It's an interesting visual. But here's the thing. I made a PDF document for you that you are able to download by going in the description below. You can also get that through the card that's in the top of the video here. In that download, you're going to find a PDF that walks you through some of these best practices, specifically with settings, because I didn't touch on settings-based profiles, so that'll teach you the settings-based profiles. Use this as your LUT-based profile information, and you've got a ton of information on building your own profiles right here in Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom. Furthermore, I've created 6 profiles for you to go ahead and experiment with. They're all things that I do, and I name them specifically, like these ones are the free profiles that I have here. There's the coolerizer, or it just makes your image cooler. There's the warmifier, it makes your image warmer. There's the neutralizer, which actually neutralizes your image out a little bit and spreads out the dynamic range of your photograph. There's the S-curve contrast, which actually gives you the S-curve that you'd have in Photoshop, but as a profile here, so that the whole time while you're working on your image, that S-curve will be kept in mind. And then a clever creative one called the sunset intensifier and the foliage intensifier. And these things are great for increasing both sunset and foliage. I put these ones in here to get your mind kind of thinking about the way I build my profiles. Now, here's the thing. You might be thinking I'm shooting myself in the foot by giving you this type of knowledge, but I want to empower you. I want you to be able to create your own artistic and creative effects, because this is critical for your growth as an artist photographer. So please feel free to download that in the description below or in the card tag that's in this video right now. Again, my name is Blake Rudis with F64 Academy and F64 Elite. If you like this, please comment on it, share it, tell a friend, and spread the word, because this is some powerful, powerful stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I didn't intend for it to go this long, but hey, I can't stop myself when we're doing a good thing, right? Have a great day.